story, terrifying ghost stories that actually happened with proof. If you're hearing this, don't turn off the lights. I'm serious. Every story you're about to hear actually happened. And the worst part, there's proof. Proof that shouldn't exist. Proof that, according to every sane explanation, shouldn't even be possible. Let me start with the one that still keeps me up at night. It was sent to me by a guy named Evan Cole, a 28-year-old mechanic from Bowling Green, Kentucky. He's not the dramatic type, not the kind of guy who goes online chasing attention. According to everyone who knows him, he's boringly normal. A guy who buys gas station coffee every morning and spends his weekends fishing. No paranormal obsession, no ghost hunting, nothing like that. But in October of last year, everything changed. Evan had just moved into a new place, a small rental home at the edge of town. A simple one-story house with yellowing vinyl siding, sitting right across from a quiet patch of woods that locals avoided after dark. He didn't think much of it. The rent was cheap, the neighborhood was calm, and he liked the idea of finally living alone. The first strange thing happened only 2 nights after he moved in. It was around 3:17 a.m. when he woke to the soft sound of something tapping against the living room window. Not knocking, tapping. Like someone gently dragging their fingernail along the glass. Evan told himself it was probably a branch. Kentucky windstorms aren't exactly rare. He rolled over, pulled the blanket up, and tried to go back to sleep. Then the tapping stopped, and the front door creaked open. He froze in bed, not because of the sound, but because of the security system. He had installed one earlier that day, a basic door sensor connected to his phone. If the door opened, he'd get a notification, but his phone stayed silent. That part bothered him more than the noise. He grabbed the baseball bat he kept under his bed and stepped into the hallway. The air felt wrong, thick, humid, like the house had suddenly filled with someone else's breath. He flicked on the hallway light and called out, "Hello, someone there?" No answer. He moved toward the living room, gripping the bat so tightly his knuckles turned white. The floorboards creaked under his feet. With each step, he expected to see someone standing in the dark, an intruder, a thief, anything that made sense. Instead, the front door was closed, locked, deadbolt turned, chain latch still hanging in place. He stood there for a full minute, staring at it, telling himself maybe he'd imagined the sound. Maybe he was half asleep. Maybe anything except the truth. But then he noticed the window facing the woods, and that tapping sound started again. Only this time, it wasn't soft. It was deliberate, a slow, rhythmic, knuckle-to-glass sound. Tap, tap, tap. Evan took one step forward, heart pounding so hard he felt it in his teeth. The curtains were closed. He couldn't see who or what was behind them. He lifted one finger and nudged the fabric to the side. That's That's when everything changed. He didn't see a person. He didn't see an animal. He saw a hand pressed flat against the outside of the glass, fingers long and pale, almost translucent in the porch light. Too long, too thin, and in the center of the palm, a dark circular scar, as if something had burned straight through it. He jumped back so fast, he tripped over his own feet and hit the floor. The tapping turned aggressive, rapid, frantic, almost angry. Tap, 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 tap. He scrambled to his feet, grabbed his phone, and snapped a picture through the crack in the curtains. The moment the camera flash went off, everything stopped. No hand, no tapping, just the empty dark of the woods beyond the glass. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he checked the photo, expecting to see nothing. Just a blurry smear, maybe reflection glare. Something he could scoff at later. Instead, the photo showed the hand, clear as day, pressed to the glass. Those long, bony fingers, and that burned hole in the palm, unmistakable. He sent the picture to his sister, who worked at a local clinic. She thought it was some kind of prop or special effect, some Halloween prank, but Evan swore on everything he had that it was, and he had more proof. Over the next few nights, the tapping escalated. Sometimes it came from the bedroom window, sometimes from the back door, sometimes from the roof. But whenever he checked outside, nothing, until the night of October 19th. That night, the tapping wasn't on a window. It wasn't at a door. It was inside the house. A single tap, coming from the hallway closet door. Evan grabbed his phone again. This time, he turned on the video and slowly approached the closet. His breath shook so hard you can hear it in the recording. When he reached the door, the tapping stopped, just for a moment. Then 3 slow knocks from inside the closet. He whispered, "Who's in there?" His voice cracked. No answer. He reached for the doorknob. His fingers hovered over it, trembling. You can hear him whisper on the video, "This is stupid. This is stupid. This is stupid." Like he was trying to talk himself out of what he already knew he was about to do. He turned the knob, pulled the door open. The light flicked on automatically, and inside, nothing, absolutely nothing. No footprints, no displaced coats, no sign anything had ever been there. Except, as Evan slowly panned his phone upward, the camera captured a shadow on the closet ceiling. A humanoid shape crouched unnaturally, limbs bent at impossible angles, as if it had been hiding in the top corner like a spider. And then, as the phone tilted further, the shadow turned its head. The video ends instantly. Evan dropped the phone and ran. He sent me that footage. I watched it frame by frame, and in the exact moment the shadow looks down, you can see a hand shape emerging from the darkness above him. The same long fingers, the same burned hole in the center of the palm. The police told him it was shadows and light distortion, but I've worked digital video long enough to know when something has weight, when something is real. Evan moved out the next morning, left everything behind. But 3 days later, he texted me again. The message said, and these are his exact words, "It followed me." And then he sent a photo taken from his new apartment, a photo of his bathroom mirror, a handprint smeared into the foggy glass, with a circular burn mark right in the center of the palm. Evan stopped answering messages after that. No one knows where he is now. Some say he left the state. Some say he had a breakdown. Some say the thing from the woods finally caught up. All I know is this: that handprint in the mirror, it was still warm when he took the picture. The second story I'm about to tell you came from a woman named Laura Martinez from Flagstaff, Arizona. She worked nights at a small roadside motel off Highway 89, a place travelers stayed when their cars broke down or when they were just too tired to keep driving through the desert. Laura wasn't easily scared. She dealt with drunk tourists, tweakers, and people threatening to leave bad reviews more times than she could count. But this was different. And like Evan, she had proof sitting in her phone gallery that she refused to delete, no matter how many times people told her she should. It started on a Wednesday, right around 1:30 a.m. Laura was sitting behind the front desk, scrolling through her feed, sipping the same stale coffee they kept in the lobby pot all night. The motel security cameras were displayed on a dusty monitor to her left, 8 little squares, showing various empty hallways, stairwells, and the parking lot. She wasn't paying much attention until something on camera 3 flickered. Camera 3 was the second floor east hallway, a completely empty stretch of carpet with doors on both sides and a vending machine at the far end. Nothing special. No guests on that floor at the time. But as Laura glanced at it, she saw something that made her sit up straight. A little girl stood at the far end of the hallway, barefoot, wearing a white nightgown, long black hair hanging limp over her shoulders. At first, Laura thought maybe a kid had wandered out of one of the rooms. It happened sometimes. Families on road trips, kids sleepwalking, things like that. She leaned closer, waiting to see which door the girl would walk back toward. But she didn't move. She just stood there, perfectly still, staring at the camera. Laura picked up the old corded lobby phone and dialed the extension for room 227, the room closest to where the girl was standing. A groggy man answered. "Hello. Sorry to bother you, sir," Laura said. "But do you have a daughter staying with you? Maybe 8 or 9 years old." The man grunted. "No, ma'am, just me." She apologized and hung up, her pulse starting to race now. When she looked back at the monitor, the girl was gone. Not walked off, not faded away, just gone. The hallway was empty again. Laura switched through all the cameras, looking for the girl on another floor, outside, anywhere. Laura. Silence, then a whisper, so soft she barely heard it. "He's coming." Laura felt a chill shoot through her body. "Who is this?" she asked. More silence. "He's coming," the voice repeated, slightly louder. It was the same voice, a young girl's voice. Laura slammed the phone down. She checked the cameras again, but everything looked normal. The hallways were empty. The lot was quiet, except for a semi-truck parked near the edge. She tried calling the number back, but the caller ID only showed unknown extension. At 2:14 a.m., things got worse. Camera 3 flickered again. Except this time, it wasn't the little girl. It was a man. A tall man. Too tall, maybe 6'8" or more, standing in the same hallway, facing away from the camera. He was wearing an old, dirty trench coat. His posture was stiff, like his shoulders were locked in place. He wasn't moving at all. Laura stared at the monitor, waiting for him to shift, to turn around, to walk toward a room, anything. But he just stood there. Then slowly, his head began to turn. Not his body, just his head, twisting around farther and farther, until it didn't make sense anymore, until his chin nearly touched the back of his shoulder. And now, he was staring directly at the camera. Laura scrambled for the lobby phone again and called the police. While she waited on the line, she watched him, this unnaturally tall man, face pale and expressionless, as he reached into his trench coat. She thought he might pull out a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a stuffed toy, a small, ragged teddy bear. And then, the little girl reappeared on the screen, standing several feet behind him. Her eyes were wide with terror. Laura dropped the phone. She didn't even hear what the operator was saying anymore. She stood up, unsure what she planned to do. But every instinct told her to run upstairs and help the child. Before she could take a step, the monitor glitched again, static ripping across the screen. When the picture cleared, the hallway was empty, both of them gone. The police arrived and checked every room. Nothing. No tall man, no little girl, no forced entry, no signs of anyone matching their description. Laura was written off as fatigued and overworked, but she knew what she saw. She quit the motel job a month later. But here's the part that keeps her up at night. 3 months after she left, she got a voicemail from an unknown number. Just 3 words, whispered in that same little girl voice. "He found me." Laura still has the voicemail. She played it for me, and at the end, right before the message cuts off, you can hear something else. Something breathing, right next to the phone. Say 3, or continue for part 3. You said 3. ChatGPT said, "Here is part 3 of your narration." Same tone, no headings, smooth continuation. Say 4 or continue for the next part. The third story came from 2 college roommates in Scranton, Pennsylvania, Marcus Hale and Tyler Jennings. They were both engineering students at Penn State Scranton. living off campus in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment above a pizza shop. The place constantly smelled like pepperoni and melted cheese, but the rent was cheap, and the landlord didn't care how loud they were, so it worked. They weren't superstitious, not even a little. They were the kind of guys who laughed at ghost videos and went out of their way to debunk every scary story they heard. Marcus even joked that if they ever found a real ghost, he'd ask it to help with homework. But something happened in that apartment, something that left both of them pale, shaking, and ready to move out before their lease ended. And unlike most stories, this one didn't start with a noise, or a shadow, or some creepy figure staring through a window. It started with a door, the door to the attic. They didn't have access to it. The landlord kept it locked. It was supposed to be storage for the restaurant downstairs. The guys had asked about it once, but the landlord told them the attic was unsafe and off limits. The lock on it was old but sturdy, a rusted brass padlock with scratches around the edges. For the first few months, they ignored it. But then, one night in November, they heard something behind the attic door. It wasn't footsteps. It wasn't pipes. It wasn't rats. It was sobbing, soft, muffled crying. At first, Marcus and Tyler froze, staring at each other like, "Please tell me you heard that too." The sobbing grew louder, still muffled, like someone was crying into their hands, but definitely coming from the attic. Tyler grabbed a broomstick like it was going to help with anything. Marcus turned on his phone flashlight and approached the door. He said, "Hello, is someone up there? You okay?" The crying stopped. Dead silence. The guys waited and waited. And after a minute or so, the quiet actually felt worse than the sobbing. They eventually went back to their rooms, telling themselves maybe it was the wind, or a pipe, or some weird acoustics in the building. But the next night, it happened again. Same time, 2:41 a.m. Same muffled crying. Same location. This time, Marcus pressed his ear against the attic door. He said later that the moment his ear touched the wood, he felt something exhale on the other side. A slow, shaky breath, like someone standing inches away. He stumbled back so fast, he tripped over his own feet. Tyler tried brushing it off, saying, "It's probably just some drunk guy from the shop downstairs." But both of them knew the stairs to the attic came from inside their apartment, not the restaurant. No one else had access. For the next week, the crying continued every night. Always at the same time. Always the same soft, hopeless sobbing. The landlord never responded to their calls, and neither of the guys had the guts to break open the door. Then something changed. One night, instead of crying, they heard 3 slow knocks from the attic. Marcus yelled through the door, "If someone's in there, say something. Knock, knock, knock." Perfectly spaced, perfectly deliberate. Tyler whispered, "Dude, what if it's not a person?" Marcus didn't want to admit it, but But something about those knocks made his stomach churn. They weren't panicked or desperate or clumsy. They were calm, controlled, like whatever was knocking wasn't asking for help. It was waiting. That night, they pushed the couch in front of the attic door before going to bed. It didn't help. At 2:41 a.m., they woke up to the same 3 knocks, but louder this time, almost violent. When they walked into the living room, the couch had been shoved several inches aside, scrape marks on the floor showing that it had been pushed from the inside. Tyler said, "Nope, I'm done. I'm sleeping in my car." But Marcus wasn't giving up yet. He grabbed a hammer, marched to the attic door, and shouted, "Whatever you are, leave us the hell alone." Silence. Then, from the other side, a whisper, a woman's voice. It said softly, "I can't." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Tyler sprinted for the front door, ready to bolt down the stairs and drive somewhere, anywhere else. But the key wouldn't turn. The door wouldn't unlock. Both of them pulled and twisted until their hands hurt. But the deadbolt felt like someone on the other side was holding it still. They were trapped. Then something slid under the attic door. A piece of paper. Tyler picked it up with shaking hands. It was a ripped notebook page, old and yellowed. On it was a single phrase written in messy, frantic handwriting. "He want me to leave." Before they could react, the attic door rattled violently. Marcus dropped the hammer. Tyler backed into the kitchen. The whole door frame shook, dust falling from the ceiling as whatever was inside slammed against it over and over. And then the padlock snapped. Not broke, not fell off. It snapped clean in half, like someone cut through solid metal with scissors. The attic door creaked open on its own, just a few inches, enough to see complete darkness beyond the cracked doorway, enough to hear something breathing in that darkness. Slow, heavy, hungry, Marcus said. He felt it staring at him, felt its attention, like a physical weight pressing on his chest. He slammed the door shut and shoved the couch back into place. But he knew it wouldn't matter. Something had let itself loose the moment that lock broke. They didn't wait for morning. They grabbed their backpacks, scaled down the fire escape outside Marcus's bedroom window, and drove off without even grabbing their laptops. They moved out completely the next day. They never went back, but the landlord eventually called them, and what he said made Tyler nearly vomit. The landlord asked, "Did you boys happen to go into the attic?" Marcus said no. They never had the key. The landlord sighed shakily. "Well, someone did, because when I went to clean it yesterday, I found footprints. A lot of them. Little ones, like a woman packing back and forth." And he hesitated. And one big footprint, just one, on the ceiling. Marcus hung up immediately. To this day, neither of them knows what cried behind that door, or what it was hiding from, or why the attic lock was so old and scratched, like something had tried for years to break out. But the landlord eventually sold the building. The new owner renovated the attic first, and during the renovation, workers found something wedged deep between the wall studs. Another sheet of that same yellowed notebook paper with 3 words written on it. This will bring the total story to the 3,000-4,000 word range. If you want an extended epilogue or bonus scene afterward, just say more. Before I tell you the last story, you need to understand something. When you hear enough of these accounts, photos, videos, evidence that shouldn't exist, you start to notice patterns. Similar details, recurring descriptions, people thousands of miles apart reporting the same impossible things. At first, I thought it was coincidence, hallucinations, sleep deprivation, the human brain misfiring in fear. But then the 4th submission came in. It wasn't sent by email. It wasn't sent by phone. There was no return address. It came in a package. A small black bubble mailer delivered to my door with no postage, no name, no tracking number. Like someone walked up in the middle of the night, set it on the porch, and left. Inside the package was a flash drive and a note. The note was handwritten in shaky block letters. If you're reading this, it's already NEARYOU. I should have thrown it away. Any sane person would have. But curiosity, stupid, dangerous curiosity, made me plug the drive into my laptop. There were only 3 files on it: a text document, a video file, and a folder labeled proof. I opened the text document first. It was written by someone named Daniel McCarthy, a 41-year-old paramedic from Fairfax, Virginia. His writing was erratic, sentences starting strong and deteriorating into frantic scratches. But the story went like this. Daniel had been responding to a call just outside the city. A Czech welfare situation. A neighbor reported hearing strange noises coming from the woods behind his house, screaming, crying, and something that didn't sound human. When Daniel and his partner arrived, the homeowner pointed toward the tree line. She was right over there, the man said. A little girl in a nightgown. She looked lost, but when I called out to her, she ran into the woods. Daniel and his partner grabbed flashlights and followed a narrow path into the trees. They searched for nearly 20 minutes before finding nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no child, at least not at first. On their way back to the house, Daniel spotted something in the beam of his flashlight. A piece of fabric caught on a low branch. White cotton torn at the corner. The exact type of material used in children's nightgowns. His partner radioed it in. Daniel kept scanning the area, and that's when they found the clearing. A wide circle of flattened grass. Branches snapped in every direction. Dirt disturbed, as if something large had been dragging itself through it. But the part that stopped Daniel cold, in the center of the clearing, half buried in a pile of leaves, was a handprint, pressed much bigger than a human hand, and in the center of the palm, a perfect circular indentation, like something had burned straight through. Daniel took a picture. He admitted in the note that he didn't believe what he was seeing, but he needed proof. Needed something to show his partner so he wouldn't feel insane. But when he called out for his partner, no one answered. Daniel walked back toward the trail, calling louder, shining his flashlight everywhere. But the woods swallowed his voice. No partner, no footsteps, no radio static. He walked faster, then ran. By the time he reached the ambulance, the back doors were open, and his partner was inside, sitting upright, completely still. His eyes were wide, unfocused, staring at something Daniel couldn't see. His mouth was slightly open, like he'd been mid-sentence before freezing in place. Daniel climbed into the ambulance, shaking him. No response. He checked his pulse. It was there, fast, erratic, but there. He said, Hey, what happened? Talk to me." His partner's jaw moved, just barely. A whisper slid out, hoarse, broken, barely recognizable as speech. "Don't look." Daniel spun around, thinking something was behind him. But there was nothing. Nothing in the ambulance. Nothing in the trees. Nothing in the clearing. Or so he thought. The next part of the note was nearly unreadable. The handwriting jagged and frantic. Daniel wrote that when he checked the footage from his partner's body camera, he found something impossible. Something he couldn't explain. That was the video file on the drive. I opened it. The body cam footage showed Daniel's partner walking into the clearing alone. Calm, calling out for the girl. Then the camera flickered. Twice, 3 times, and behind his partner, something began to materialize. At first, it looked like a silhouette. A tall, hunched shape stepping slowly out from between the trees. But the longer I watched, the more defined it became. A towering figure, skin as pale as moonlight, limbs too long, too thin, shoulders permanently slouched forward, like it had spent years crawling through tight spaces. And its hand, its massive, warped hand, had the same burned circle in the palm. It reached out, not toward the paramedic, toward the camera. The screen jolted. The footage glitched. The audio turned into a shrill, metallic screech. For a moment, I thought the video was corrupted, but then the image stabilized. The creature's face filled the entire frame. No eyes, no nose, just a stretched, lipless mouth held open in a silent scream. The footage ended abruptly. I stared at my laptop screen for what felt like hours. When I finally opened the folder labeled proof, my stomach twisted. Inside were 12 photos, all taken on different dates, different cities, different states. A handprint on a car windshield in Nevada, a long shadow on a basement wall in Illinois, a little girl standing at the end of a motel hallway in Arizona, the same little girl from Laura's motel, a shape crouched in the corner of a closet in Kentucky. single footprint on an attic ceiling in Pennsylvania. The same footprint Marcus and Tyler heard described by the landlord. And then the last photo, a picture taken through a window, looking into a dark room, taken from outside. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then I recognized the room. It was my office, my desk, my microphone, my chair, and standing behind the chair was a tall, pale figure, head tilted, shoulders slouched, hand pressed against the back of my chair, a burned circle in its palm, the timestamp on the photo. Last night, I sat frozen in my seat, staring at the screen, every hair on my body standing upright, every instinct screaming to run, and never look back. But then I noticed the final detail. In the bottom right corner of the photo, a reflection in the window of a little girl, watching, smiling. I don't know who sent the package. I don't know how they took that photo. I don't know how close the thing might still be. All I know is that since opening those files, I've been hearing things, tapping on the glass, whispers near the closet, footsteps in the hallway at night, 3 slow knocks, always at the same time, 2:41 a.m. I'll tell you this once. If you hear knocking in your home tonight, if you hear a little girl crying, if you see a handprint on your mirror, don't open the door. Don't investigate. Don't pretend it will go away. Because these stories aren't just stories. They're warnings. And if you're listening to this now, if you've heard every word, then you're already part of it, whether you want to be or not. And if you hear tapping on your window tonight, don't look. It hates being seen.